Hi everyone, in today's video I am going to talk about the two types of observation techniques. One is natural and one is controlled. When do we use these two techniques and what are the advantages and disadvantages of these two techniques? So in my previous videos I have talked about observation as a data collection tool, as it is often used by researchers, when to use it, what are the advantages and disadvantages. But in today's video I'm going to talk about mainly natural observation and controlled observation. So let's talk about natural observation first. So natural observation is when you do not create a setting for observation. You observe people or participants in their natural settings. It's like how often in documentaries you see people observing natural wildlife in a forest or in a place where the wildlife is normally found. They do not simulate any conditions, they do not create any special conditions, they mainly observe the wildlife as they are. So the same thing you can do is that you can observe, let's say, a behavior of a tribe, or the behavior of students, or the behavior of prisoners in a prison. If you want to observe their behavior from a distance and do not want to become part of the population or the sample, you just want to observe them from a distance in their natural settings without changing anything, then that is called a natural observation. So the advantages of this natural observation is that this type of observation has high ecological validity. What is ecological validity? This means that what you understand about the behavior of a certain population or a sample or participants, then you can use it to predict their behavior in their real life setting. So of course, when you observe people in their natural settings, you can use what you learn from that to predict their behavior in other natural settings as well. Another advantage of this is that often when you observe people in natural settings, or you observe anything in natural settings, you get a lot of ideas, a lot of case studies that you can use as either your data as data, or you can use it to conduct further research, or you can use it to generate ideas for further research as well. However, there are certain disadvantages. The disadvantages is that if you want to observe anything in its natural settings, firstly, as a researcher, you have to be trained to be an observer, because often what happens that an observer is busy making notes, but forgets to observe the behaviors that he or she should be, or they are too busy observing and forget to make the notes, so they miss out on certain data. So you have to be trained as an observer. You also can, because there are no conditions involved, you don't create any conditions for study. What you observe, what you study cannot be replicated by another researcher, and this is where the reliability of the research findings sometimes gets affected. That what you observe is purely your data as an observer, and another observer may disagree with that observation, they may refute those findings because they cannot be able to recreate the whole thing again. Again, when you are observing people in their very natural settings, sometimes you cannot control for the various parameters of the sample size. For example, if you want to observe a population of certain sex or certain age or certain height, or any other physical characteristics or natural characteristics, you cannot control them. You basically have to observe what you do observe, you cannot do anything. And of course, if any variables cannot be changed, so you cannot find out any cause and effect relationships here. You observe what you see, you cannot actually create anything to explain the cause and effect behavior in natural settings. As opposed to natural observation technique, you have controlled observation technique, and controlled observation technique is very similar to, if I draw the analogy between animals, then natural observation was observing animals in their natural wildlife setting, and controlled is observing animals in a zoo or in a cage, where you simulate a condition, where you create a condition for observation. So similarly, if you want to study the behavior of your participants in a certain simulated condition, for example, you want to study the effect of working conditions on the productivity of a group of workers, what you can do is you can put them in a room and you can initially start off with a very good lighting, a good AC, food and drinks, snacks provided, breaks provided, and then you can have an observation, or you can do a comparison, or you can slowly change the conditions by switching off the AC, or not giving them snacks or drinks, giving them lesser breaks, reducing the lighting, making the ventilation poor, so to see how it affects the productivity of the people, or simply putting people together who are unfamiliar with each other, who don't get along. Is their productivity higher than people who get along very well? So that way you can observe the behavior. Another advantages of controlled observation is that you can actually codify the behavior. You don't have to simply observe it and note it. You can codify, because you know exactly what you're looking for. For example, if you have put people who are unfamiliar with each other in a working condition, you can observe whether how many breaks they take, how many times they interact with each other, how many times they stop working. So you can codify them, you can put numbers against these behaviors, because you are mainly watching out for these behaviors and observe them. Of course, in control setting, you have to let the participants know most of the times that you're observing them. So sometimes researchers use two-way mirrors, sometimes they put them in a room and they observe them through video cameras. These days, of course, technology has allowed you to do or perform a virtual observation as well, where you can be in one side of the world and observe participants in another side of the world. Especially after COVID and all the gadgets that have come, all the apps that have come, you can do that as well. So the basic idea behind that is that you are observing them, but they know that you're observing them. So this is where the disadvantage comes in. The disadvantage is, of course, the Hawthorne effect, where people change their behavior or they adjust their behavior because they know they are being observed. So although workers have been put in poor conditions, they will try to sustain their productivity because they know they are being observed. And they may think they are being observed by their employers, so they will not let some of the poor working conditions affect their productivity as well, which is not what we really expect them to do. So that is one disadvantage. The advantage, of course, is that you can quickly collect data, large amount of data, because you have got your sample size, you know the sample that you wanted to target, you've got them in a room, you can collect a lot of data quickly. Because you can observe them in that environment quickly, get that data. You can also analyze it quickly because it's coded, it's all numbers, so you can analyze it, the numbers. You can also repeat the experiment for reliability because you created the condition, so even another researcher can replicate it and corroborate with your findings, or maybe not, but you can also replicate it to improve the reliability of your research, that every time you replicate the experiment, you are finding the same thing. You can also manipulate with the variables. You know which variables you want to really study, so you can manipulate with that. So some of the variables can be, for example, lesser number of breaks and impact on productivity, or more number of breaks and impact on productivity. And the output can be what the certain group of workers are making. So if you have more breaks, do they make more of the stuff or less of that stuff? So it's very easy to manipulate these variables and find the data regarding it. So these are some of the differences between natural and controlled observation techniques. So when you are trying to choose one of them, make sure that you can justify it, because this is what the examiners and the reviewers want to read in your research report or your thesis or your publication, that why did you use one technique, why did you think that this particular technique was more useful for you to find what you were trying to find, how does it help you to answer your research questions. That is mainly what they want to see, and then they see whether that technique really helped you to answer that question or not. So if you had to use a control experiment and you used a natural one and you are not getting the answer, or the answer you're getting has a lot of bias or a lot of loophole, data that you cannot justify, then of course the examiners and reviewers will question you on it and you will get stuck. So please make sure you justify whichever technique you use, and you also justify how it helped you to answer the research question better. Thank you for watching today's videos, guys. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you soon with my next video. Bye for now.